welcome back to a special edition of Spotlight here on My News 26. I'm Eric Wotilla, joined by Congressman John Moolenaar here in our studio today. And before the break, we were talking about the Soo locks and what is needed to put a new lock in the Soo. And you mentioned it's a very expensive proposition, but it's one that's been approved in the past and never happened. So what does it take to get there again, and how do we make sure that that actually happens this time around if it's something that passes?
Well, in my experience, the executive branch is very important because they're the first ones that propose the budget for the new year. And so as we work in the next few months of educating them of the importance of the Soo locks, and hopefully they will then recognize that and make that part of their budget proposal when that comes out February, early spring. Then Congress moves on its budget and works together, and then you have the appropriations process. And the budget is kind of, if you think about it, sort of a planning document. That's where it's been approved twice as a plan, but ultimately you need to have the funds appropriated, and that's where the actual spending comes in. And so my goal is to, if we can get this funded as a plan in the budget, and then also follow through with the appropriations. Recently, as I mentioned, we passed our appropriations bills for the upcoming year. Now, we'll start working on the 2018-19 budget going forward. So it's, finish one, start another, but to get this in the right cycle, we really need the president and the executive branch to lead on this.
Certainly. And speaking of the president, one of his campaign promises was, of course, the border wall on the Mexican border. And that's been a big topic in this year's budget. On the congressional level, kind of where does that stand? What are you hearing in Congress as the budget is worked on?
Well, that is an issue that, some people support, some people don't. I think in general, Republicans would like to see us move forward on this. The Democrats are using this as a way to kind of resist what the president's trying to do. My belief is this: you have to secure the borders. For the American people to have confidence in our country and our security, you have to know who's coming across our border. A wall can be part of that. That's not the only solution. It's part of a larger plan of securing our borders. And so we're going to continue to move forward on that. When you consider the drugs coming across the border, when you consider the number of gang leaders coming across the border, not to mention terrorists, we need to know that we have a secure border. And then we can work on some of these other issues in terms of improving our immigration legally and get to the issues that are of concern to all Americans.
Certainly. And another very controversial topic that's been talked about, and I guess it's less budgetary, but the Affordable Care Act. We'll come back to budget in just a second here. Again, kind of that climate in Congress. What are you hearing about reform of the Affordable Care Act, or where it stands in general?
Well, in the House, we passed legislation that would provide an alternative to the Affordable Care Act. And it's a patient-centered approach where people can choose their doctor, choose the plan that best fits their need, that would drive down premiums and deductibles, give more choices, we believe is a good plan. The Senate was not able to pass a plan, although I am told that in the next week there is going to be another effort to try and pass some kind of a resolution on health care. So we'll see what they do, but we know that the current system isn't working well, and we need to make sure that Americans have the kind of health care that is affordable, that people can access, and they have more ownership of their own health care, so they aren't paying for things they don't need and really can choose a plan that best fits the needs of their families.
And you mentioned the current system's not working. Have you had a chance to talk to many constituents locally and hear their feedback on that?
Well, when you consider some people have a deductible and have to pay the first $12,000 of their health care plan, that's not really having health insurance, when you're putting that much money out right from the start. So I hear from people all the time how much their premiums have increased. We see across the board, in Michigan, they continue to increase in double digits. Some states, it's up to 100% increase. and then the deductibles, and then more insurers are leaving the market. We just had the Health Alliance plan in Michigan leaving the market because it's just a system that is not designed well and is failing.
Certainly. A couple more budget points to hit in the next 2 minutes or so here. Tax reform. That is another hot topic that people are, under any administration, always talking about. But what are the current attitudes on tax reform, and what's being done on that note?
Well, the president's leading on this, and the Congress is working with him. I'm encouraged by the progress being made. You have a work group in both the House working with the Senate and the White House on tax reform. We're hoping to make sure that we simplify the system, make sure it's fairer and flatter so that there's not so much confusion, but also give incentives for businesses that are keeping dollars offshore because of a penalty they have to pay for bringing it back. It gives them the incentive to actually invest in our country for growth because, you know, a 2% growth is not acceptable. We want to get it up to 3%, 4%, and make sure our economy's growing, jobs are growing, and dollars that are offshore are vested back into jobs in this country.
And quickly, on the note of budget and investment in this country, national defense, what's being done on the note of that budget?
Sure. Well, we've increased it dramatically. $640 billion plus another $60 billion for overseas contingency. That's something that's working its way through the Senate right now. When you consider that, you know, we are facing threats, whether it's North Korea and a rogue dictator there who continues to fire missiles and develop nuclear weapons, when you consider things happening in Syria, when you consider the threat of Russia, instability in Venezuela, you know, you can go around the globe and see tremendous instability and hot spots, and we need to simply be sure that our troops have the support and the resources they need to be successful in whatever mission we send them on. And with the world, the dangerous threats we face, I believe we are making progress on the war on terror. I think the president has been a strong leader when it comes to rebuilding our defenses and make sure we're taking the fight to ISIS and partnering with other countries that are willing to work with us on this. But there's a lot more to be done, and you have a very unpredictable dictator in North Korea who seems bent on testing the world.
And on that note of North Korea, when we come back, we're going to be discussing some of the threats faced here right now and what's being done on the note of those threats. You're watching a special edition of Spotlight with Congressman John Moolenaar. We'll be right back.